as Justin Trudeau meets face-to-face with Donald Trump.
The last thing Canadians expect is for me to come down and lecture another country.
Good evening, I'm Peter Mansbridge, and this is The National.
We have a very outstanding trade relationship with Canada.
But Trump says it needs tweaking. We'll see what that could mean. How both leaders used women's issues to their advantage. And big meeting means big talk. So Andrew and Chantel are here for a special At Issue. And we'll also get the take from stateside as David Frum joins us from Washington. Well, if the bar was simply for Justin Trudeau to make it out of Washington without negative headlines, without angering Donald Trump, then the Prime Minister's trip could arguably be called a success. But is that what the bar should be in this day and age of Canada-U.S. relations? Is that enough for Canadians? There are big points of potential friction right now, immigration and trade to name two. Both leaders face questions about them, standing beside each other. The takeaway on trade, Trump does not see Canada as a big problem. Canada is no Mexico in the president's eyes. But on immigration, slightly less accord. Our Catherine Cullen is in Washington tonight. Catherine.
Well, Peter, in the United States, this visit was a relatively brief blip in the storms of controversy that surround Donald Trump. But for Canada's Prime Minister, it does seem that today he did what he set out to do.
We are going to have a great relationship with Canada, maybe as good or better, hopefully, than ever before.
Those superlatives are vintage Donald Trump, and it's what Justin Trudeau came to Washington hoping to hear. It all seemed pleasant enough, and Trudeau's goal was to get along, to buddy up and try to convince the Americans not to introduce measures that would steamroll Canadian trade. The Canadians tried to insist the two countries could find common cause and dreamed up an example to help make their case.
Strong women are here. Strong women are definitely here. There's no question.
A new initiative on women in the workforce, inviting female CEOs from both sides of the border and Trump's beloved daughter, Ivanka. Politically, it allows Trudeau to argue he's selling his self-described feminist values abroad. And Trump, who has had women protesting against him, can argue this shows he supports women.
They play a tremendously important role, women, in our economy.
Welcome to Canada.
But there is no denying that there's a lot the leaders disagree on. Trudeau's government has welcomed 40,000 Syrian refugees to Canada, while Trump is trying to ban refugees and travelers from 7 Muslim-majority countries. Some in Canada insisted Trudeau had a moral obligation to take Trump to task for that ban. The Prime Minister made it clear he wouldn't.
The last thing Canadians expect is for me to come down and lecture another country on how they choose to govern themselves.
Though he did at times seem to suggest that he was obligated to get along with Trump.
History has demonstrated time and again that in order to tackle our most pressing issues, both foreign and domestic, we must work with our closest allies.
And for holding his tongue, Trudeau got the reward that he wanted when Trump said in his plans to shake up NAFTA, Canada would get off easier than Mexico.
We have a very outstanding trade relationship with Canada. We'll be tweaking it. We'll be doing certain things that are going to benefit both of our countries. It's a much less severe situation than what's taken place on the southern border. Thank you very much.
Trudeau also knows there's political risk in getting along too well with Trump. So even though Trump put on the record that Canada was in a safer space, Trudeau was only lukewarm about it in one of his final meetings of the day.
How was the press conference? Press conference.
Now, there is no ironclad guarantee for Canada here that Canada is not going to get hit with a new border tax or new tariffs, but Trudeau can return to Ottawa at least hoping that he has convinced Trump that on the economy, Canada is more of an ally than an adversary. Peter?
All right, Catherine, thank you. Trudeau brought Trump a gift of a lion sculpture, hand-carved from Ohio sandstone. He also gave him a photo of a younger Trump with the senior Trudeau. It was taken at a 1981 award dinner in New York. Pierre Trudeau received the Family of Man Gold Medallion for demonstrating excellence in society. And we found the actual tape from the event deep in the CBC library. Donald Trump is at the head table with the first Prime Minister Trudeau. Well, with the word of the day out of Washington being tweak, there were likely some sighs of relief in this country, but tweak is a bit of a subjective word. What could it mean in terms of changes to the trade relationship? Jacqueline Hansen looks at that.
Provantage Automation manufactures machinery in Ancaster, Ontario, but most of the parts it uses come from countries around the world.
None of the pieces on this table are actually made in Canada.
That is correct.
They come from Germany, the Philippines, Mexico, but mainly the U.S., which means under NAFTA rules of origin, most of the parts it imports are tariff-free.
All these would go into something that we would do. How do you unravel that trade agreement? The world is too far down that. I think the president understands that.
When asked about the future of NAFTA today, Trump talked about big issues with Mexico, but with Canada, just those tweaks.
Our relationship with Canada is outstanding, and we're going to work together to make it even better.
In Canada, that was enough to alleviate some anxiety.
Hearing that there's only an expectation of some tweaks here and there is a sign of relief for all of the business community.
What those tweaks could be is still unclear. Some trade experts speculate that it could include changes to country of origin rules and how some trade disputes are resolved. Some in the business community are hopeful there is also room to modernize the decades-old deal.
Even just the classification of professionals that are in NAFTA, there are jobs that exist today that didn't exist 20 years ago.
Jobs such as those in the high-tech sector. Others suggest any so-called tweaks may not have any great impact.
Canada and U.S. trade is relatively well balanced. Donald Trump and his administration don't see Canada as the problem they seek to fix.
We have a Canadian machine designed to sell more American product, hence Make America Great.
Rob Hatton says he's prepared to work with America's new focus on itself, but any trade negotiations are still a source of anxiety for him.
This is kind of like a ride on the roller coaster. It can go really well or it can go off the rails really, really quick.
For Canadian business, accustomed by now to Trump's rhetoric on what he's called the disaster of NAFTA, today was far less dramatic. NAFTA's future is still an unknown, but Trump clearly signaled that Canada is not much of a target. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, more about one of the areas where the president and the prime minister found consensus. It's called the United States-Canada Council for Advancement of Women Entrepreneurs and Business Leaders. Don't get bogged down by the name. It could signal the priority Trump is giving women's economic issues. The official communiqué said, "We expect this initiative to promote the growth of women-owned enterprises and to further contribute to our overall economic growth and competitiveness."
I think it's a win for both because it is an area of mutual understanding and mutual concern between the two countries.
Advancing women has been a clear priority for the Prime Minister. After his Liberal Party came to power, he was praised for naming a cabinet that was 50% women.
Because it's 2015.
By contrast, Trump has few women in cabinet, but he does have his daughter, Ivanka. Although not part of his administration, she has a huge influence on the president and has been a vocal advocate for policies benefiting working women.
As president, my father will change the labor laws that were put in place at a time when women were not a significant portion of the workforce.
The council will be made up of 5 women from each country. Some of them were at today's meeting. For example, Elise Allen, president and CEO of GE Canada. Tina Lee, CEO of TNT Supermarket Inc. And Dawn Farrell, president and CEO of TransAlta Corp.
Truly, there's a genuine desire by the Prime Minister to understand what it really takes to get women into leadership. And I saw the same genuine desire by President Trump. So, I mean, really it was them asking us what the issues were.
Women are major factors in both economies, according to the most recent data. In the U.S., 57% of women participate in the labor force. In Canada, that number is even higher, 61%. And many of those women share the same problems: affordable childcare, opportunities for career advancement, and of course, the struggle for pay equity, where in Canada the wage gap is just over 21%. So, what was accomplished today?
It'll remain to be seen how the Council is struck and the kinds of recommendations we make, but I think there's a lot of power in it, for sure.
What will matter is what are the results that are achieved at the end of the day, and do we advance women in business and in entrepreneurship?
But for most working women, real progress means taking down the barriers that are already there. It's certainly not about building up walls. So there were wins on both sides today, but overall, how did the Prime Minister do? Did he strike the right balance between defending Canada's positions and keeping the peace with a president who has already proven to be volatile when dealing with other leaders? Power and Politics host Rosemary Barton was watching it all very closely from Ottawa. Rosie, what's the sense from there of how Justin Trudeau did?
Listen, the risk was high because, as you said, of the unpredictability of this particular president, but they had laid a lot of groundwork, whether it be cabinet ministers or the Prime Minister's team going in there and sort of getting a sense of how this would unfold. So the bar for success today for the Prime Minister was, A, set the right tone. He wants to be able to get this guy on the phone when he needs to. And he needs to get some direction in terms of some of the major issues, whether it be the border, where they got some real assurances that it would not be thickened. In fact, they're looking at pre-examination of cargo or pre-clearance of cargo as the way forward, or on NAFTA. Yes, we don't know what tweak means, but it would appear that we are not the target of these renegotiations of NAFTA. So all of that was good. And most importantly, he needed to get out of there without hitting any tripwires. And he did that. He didn't overtly criticize the president. He defended what Canada stands for, and he didn't get into it on that front. So he stayed out of the headlines. That may mean that it was a rather unremarkable visit, at least for the Americans. But if that's what he walked away with today, then so be it.
One of the big issues, obviously, is how you stay on the radar. And already tonight, it's as watching American television, it's as if the trip never happened. How does Canada stay on the radar?
There's a couple things to watch for. First of all, cabinet ministers, cabinet secretaries coming from Washington up to Canada to visit. That will happen in the coming weeks, and we will continue to keep those channels of communication open. But the other thing to watch for is who will the ambassador be to Canada from the United States. That decision is still not confirmed, but that will be an important signal about how seriously the administration takes Canada. And finally, will the president actually come here? That invitation has been extended. Lots of questions about the kind of protests that might arise if he does. But if he were to come here as well, that would signal that he obviously finds this relationship matters to him as well.
All right, Rosie, thank you. Rosemary Barton in Ottawa. So we've heard from officials, business leaders, and political watchers, but outside of the two capitals, how did today's meeting go over, and what does it signal? Briar Stewart has reaction from Edmonton.
The citizenship ceremony is now in session.
More than 100 new Canadians are taking the oath of citizenship at this ceremony in Edmonton. So just what do our newest citizens think of the Prime Minister's visit to Washington?
The relationship is very important. They have to put the differences aside for the people of Canada and also for the people of the United States.
As for Trudeau's decidedly diplomatic tone and refusal to lecture Donald Trump, this now dual American-Canadian citizen says it was the right move.
Trudeau, the best he can do is say what's best for Canada, do what's best for him and his country, and go from there. You know, staying strong is important, but I don't think I want to be too aggressive.
He's fighting an uphill battle at the moment.
At this Rotary luncheon, talk of Trump's posturing and policies was front and center.
I think it could be somewhat scary. It's going to affect us in some ways or other. We've seen some things already.
For some, serious concerns persist about the new presidency.
I am very worried about it. I think that there's a lot of jobs that are reliant on it.
But others say Trump is not all bad.
obviously some of his policies aren't the greatest, and a lot of people disagree with them. But economically, I don't think he is a very moronic man, especially the fact that he's made a lot of money.
And of course, today's visit, while high profile, is simply a starting point.
It seems like he's going to be a little more favorable in his stance towards Canada, but it's going to have to play it by ear. Trump is going to want to give and take.
And what exactly that will mean for Canadians is still very unclear. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Edmonton.
Well, Washington's diplomatic temperature may be a matter of opinion, but here at home, Atlantic Canadians are definitely in a February freeze-out. In Nova Scotia today was pretty much one big closed sign at airports, public transit, schools, and offices. Blizzard conditions are bringing lots of snow, as much as 40 centimeters in New Brunswick, up to 70 in western Nova Scotia, 60 further east, including Cape Breton, and up to 40 on PEI and in parts of Newfoundland and Labrador. The CBC's Tom Murphy is braving it for us tonight in Halifax. Tom.
Yes, Peter, what a day it's been in the Maritimes. You know, the wind and the snow, it started long before dawn today, and tonight, in many parts of this region, the storm is still going strong.
So far this winter, Nova Scotia had been left relatively unscathed. Now this.
Pretty gnarly.
It is. It's like the real winter crept up on us with a vengeance.
Didn't see a lot of anything, a lot of blowing snow in the face.
It's really windy and snowy, and I'm from Saskatchewan, and this is like nothing I've seen so far. True Nova Scotia experience right here.
All that wind, at times gusting over 100 kilometers per hour, contributed to storm surges around the province. Take a look at the edge of Halifax Harbor, where crews tried to protect waterfront restaurants from going underwater. This boat club didn't fare as well. Some areas are expecting 70 centimeters or more of snow. Cities are ghost towns. Public transit is not running. Offices, stores, schools, and universities shut down. Some have already announced they won't be reopening tomorrow either. And airports throughout the region were empty. Flights grounded, leaving some feeling more than a little stranded.
Where you're born somewhere else. You're born in Australia?
Yeah, so it's quite the difference here.
Don't you wish you were in Australia right now?
Yeah, it can get that way.
The Confederation Bridge to and from Prince Edward Island has been shut down to all traffic. And in New Brunswick, the dig-out has already begun.
I'm doing, I think, smartly a little bit of work now to avoid a huge amount of work later. Perhaps. If I do it 6 times, then maybe I'm not so smart.
They'll be shelving for a while, I can tell you that. You know, that storm surge is still a threat along the Atlantic coast, especially here in Nova Scotia tonight. And all that wind and snow really making it difficult for power crews to get to the power outages, thousands of them in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. Customers without power in the dark tonight. They are being told that they, in fact, may not get their power back, some of them, until this time tomorrow night. Oh, and by the way, just a heads up for Newfoundland and Labrador, it's all coming your way. Peter.
All right. Tom, thanks very much. Well, the government of Ontario promised today to find and make right all the mercury contamination that has hurt 2 First Nations communities for decades. Scientific studies have found the English Wabigoon River remains contaminated after mercury was dumped upstream in the 1960s and early 1970s. As much as 90% of the nearby population is said to show signs of mercury poisoning. We'll have more news of the day later, but stay with us now. Coming up next, Andrew and Chantel with a special Monday night at issue. And then a bit later, David Frum with The View from Washington.
I am sure you agree that we should talk frankly to each other. Frankness, in good spirit, is a measure of friendship.
The issues and irritants that inevitably affect all neighbors are small indeed in comparison with the issues that we face together.
Our friendship is deep and our understanding is great, but we have many problems, of course.
But a day which also saw what looked like the beginning of a fundamental friendship between Mr. Trudeau and President Nixon.
This is a new era of consultation and, we hope, cooperation.
Some American officials seemed appalled as Canadian security allowed demonstrators within yards of the first meeting between Prime Minister Trudeau and the President.
Canadians expect much of Americans, but more important, Canadians have faith in the Americans.
The Prime Minister was here to tell President Reagan what he was telling Canadian voters for the past few months, that he wants to restore not just good relations, but what he calls super relations between Canada and the U.S.
From President Clinton, there was no limit to the praise and the admiration he expressed for Prime Minister Chrétien.
Under your wise leadership, Mr. Prime Minister, relations between the United States and Canada have never been closer or more constructive.
He's a good guy, and I enjoyed to be with him.
4 years, 3 weeks, and 2 days since first being elected U.S. president, and George Bush said hello to Canada.
I frankly felt like the reception we received on the way in from the airport was very warm and hospitable, and I want to thank the Canadian people who came out to wave with all 5 fingers for
The purpose of the trip was that Stephen Harper and Barack Obama have some time to get to know each other and discuss whether they shared an agenda and some objectives.
I came to Canada on my first trip as president to underscore the closeness and importance of the relationship between our two nations.
We see ourselves in each other. We're guided by the same values.
And like all great, enduring friendships, at our best, we bring out the best in one another.
Going to have a great relationship with Canada, maybe as good or better, hopefully, than ever before.
It's a tremendous pleasure to be here in Washington. Merci beaucoup.
Well, they look pretty pleased with how things went. Should they be? Andrew and Chantel gave up their Monday night to tell us what they think. Andrew's here in Toronto, Chantel's in Montreal. So what's your general sense? How did they do, Andrew?
Well, look, you know, they don't hold these things unless they've got some reasonable assurance of success at the best of times or in any of these conferences. I imagine there was even more negotiations and discussions that went into this one, and there may be a story in some of those early negotiations, but by the time they got the leaders together, it was pretty assured of some degree of success. Trudeau's personal performance, you know, he'd nailed down this formula some time ago of, you know, just simply stressing how Canada does things without being overtly critical of the United States. I think the wild card was more in Trump's performance. Nobody can really predict from one day to the next how he's going to perform. But I think with all of the chaos that's been enveloping the White House of lately, he was probably under strict orders to stick to the script, and he did for the most part.
He probably enjoyed 3 hours without the chaos obvious in front of him. Chantel, what was your take?
Just about the same. Trudeau was there on a good Trump day, a quiet day, and I think they were grateful for that. I think the Canadians achieved all of their objectives. It may be that the bar is low. What is called success today is having an American president state something that we've been taking for granted for 30 years. And that's the definition of success. But still, given the hurdles, given all of the other things that have been happening in Washington, it went well. It was well planned. Trudeau played his role properly, and I can't see that it could have gone any better.
You know, there's a lot of people trying to determine what the meaning of tweak is tonight. What should we take from the use of that word? Should we assume that it's just minor tinkering, or was that kind of an out? Andrew? Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
When you sit down to negotiate trade, a lot of interest groups, industries show up. So whatever you think is tweaking today might be more significant or insignificant once you're at the table. I don't think even Donald Trump knows what the definition of tweak really is.
And it's not just on trade. Look, this is day one of the relationship between them. Not only do we not know what's happening on trade, that's to be determined, but on a whole range of issues. It's one thing, it's fine to say, you know, the Prime Minister doesn't necessarily need to get in the President's face, you know, at a joint press conference on the travel ban and the implications for Canada in that regard. But our interests as well as our values are engaged there, and they're going to need to be a steady pressure put from this day forward on that issue. So yeah, we had a good day today where they got along fine, nobody threw anything, but this is only the beginning.
You know, there was one moment that I found interesting when Justin Trudeau quoted Churchill about the Canada-U.S. relationship, and that played two ways. One, it played to Trump's apparent affection for Churchill. He's brought the bust of Churchill back into the Oval Office. But what was actually said was interesting. Some people are reading into it. Let's just watch the clip here to remind ourselves of it.
Winston Churchill once said, "That long Canadian frontier from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans, guarded only by neighborly respect and honorable obligations, is an example to every country and a pattern for the future of the world." That, my friends, is the very essence of the Canada-U.S. relationship.
So was he trying to signal something there in the use of that quote, Andrew?
Probably. I mean, politicians speak in platitudes all the time. But what's interesting always is what's the choice of platitudes, which ones do they use and which ones did they leave out? So there's an example there. I think this probably is worth reading something into it. I thought it was interesting that Trudeau, for example, mentioned the 1991 Acid Rain Accord, and I may have missed it, but I don't think that found its way into Trump's speaking notes. I thought it was also interesting Trudeau making a point of saying, I'm not going to come down here and lecture the president. You know, that implies that there was something that he needed to be lectured about. So it was a subtle way of demurring from criticism and yet also offering some.
Chantal?
Yes, except at some point speaking in code just won't cut it, and we may look back on today as the high point of the relationship depending on where the Trump administration goes from here. I don't think that Donald Trump would have taken that Churchill quote to mean anything that doesn't fit his worldview, i.e. good frontier Canada, bad frontier Mexico.
Yeah, it was funny. I was watching his face, Trump's face, during the quote, and there was one point where he smiled, I think more in affection for the fact that it was Churchill that was speaking as opposed to listening particularly to the quote. Let me throw something else at you. One thing that neither side mentioned today, at least not directly, were the words climate change. And we were used to, with Trudeau and Obama, and Trudeau in other meetings with other world leaders, including the Three Amigos, climate change was always a big thing on the agenda. It was always in all the statements. Nothing here today. What does that tell us?
That they're going to be pushing that agenda with state governments rather than with the White House, that they feel it's not worth spending political capital on it at this stage, especially at the first meeting, because it's like throwing change up in the air. Basically, that's where I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, they looked for the overlap. If you look at that long communique that the White House issued, which could have been written by the Prime Minister's office and may well have been, it was all the things where there's an overlap. Obviously, we have broad agreement that we'd like to have some degree of free trade. We'll hope that it's as full as we have now. And we have agreement that we want to have security, depending on what the meanings of that is. So they look for the overlap, and they're not going to focus on things in which they clearly disagree.
The Prime Minister's back in the House of Commons tomorrow. The opposition, one assumes, is going to be standing there with some questions about this trip. Is he vulnerable on anything to them tomorrow?
I don't think really, except more to his left than to his right. I think the NDP will be trying to say, I imagine will be saying that you should have been more overt, more critical on particularly on the immigration front. And I would agree with that in the long run. I want to see them pressing that case, even including in public. I just don't think he necessarily had to do it today. But I would imagine that will be one of the points that the NDP will be hitting.
Chantal, last word.
I agree with Andrew. I also don't think they're going to pursue that particular visit as something that they can attack on for very long. The rest of the relationship will probably provide more material.
All right. Good of both of you to come out tonight. Chantal facing cold weather and a bit of snow in Montreal. Andrew here in Toronto. Well, when we come back, the view from the other side of the border as David Frum joins us from Washington. And then, a bit later, what's in a handshake? Quite a bit when you're meeting Donald Trump. We'll check out some of the moves that have caught people's attention. Time to check the day's business numbers. It was a record-breaking day for several major indices, including the TSX, which gained 27 points. The Canadian dollar was slightly up. In New York, both the Dow and the Nasdaq reached record highs. Meanwhile, the price of oil fell 93 cents a barrel. Well, throughout the past year, David Frum has been helping us with our coverage of U.S. politics and Donald Trump in particular. As a senior editor of The Atlantic, he's become a must-read for those following these extraordinary times in U.S. politics. He's in Washington tonight. David, any discussion of what happened in Washington today can't ignore the fact there's chaos in the White House on a lot of issues that have nothing to do with Canada. And as a result, over these 3 or 4 hours he spent with Justin Trudeau, you have to wonder how engaged he was, knowing all this other stuff was going on.
Well, from a Canadian point of view, a disengaged Donald Trump is a satisfactory Donald Trump. He was disengaged. He read the notes that were put in front of him dutifully and without interest. And that is a good thing from a Canadian point of view, because when Donald Trump turns his interest toward you, bad things tend to happen.
And there didn't appear to be any of those moments, at least in what we saw in public today.
No, I think basically what happened in the setup to this meeting was that Donald Trump's political aides read him the Riot Act. As volatile and unpredictable as Donald Trump is, the only reason he is in the White House is because he won 150,000 votes, more than Hillary Clinton, in 3 states, while losing 3 million overall. And those 3 states are Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And those states happen to be unusually exposed to trade with Canada. Just a number from Pennsylvania. Donald Trump's margin in Pennsylvania was 67,000 votes. More than 300,000 Pennsylvania jobs depend on trade with Canada. In Wisconsin and Michigan, Canada accounts for more than 1/3 of those states' total exports to the whole of planet Earth. You mess up the U.S.-Canadian relationship, you mess up those 3 states, you mess up the upper Midwest, you mess up Donald Trump's political base.
You know, there was a lot of attention spent today on that meeting over the lunch hour with the various different leaders from business, female leaders, women leaders. Yeah. Some people are suggesting this was a smart card played by the Canadians. It was their idea because it involved one Ivanka Trump, who we haven't seen a lot of since Trump became president. Was it smart, and just what kind of an impact would that have?
No, it was shrewd. Look, one of the ways that Donald Trump is different from past presidents, in a way you get the best results by appealing to his worst instincts, that he is running a highly self-interested administration. And those who must get along with this administration, and that the core allies, important trading partners, they have to deal with Donald Trump as he is, not as you'd like him to be. And the way to his heart is basically through his economic interest, through his vanity, and through his attachment to his daughter.
You know, a lot of people here are trying, you heard Andrew and Chantel deal with it as well, trying to understand the meaning of tweak. Should we be placing much emphasis on that, or does it fit back into your answer about those border states that are critical for Trump?
Well, Canada has 2 trade interests in the United States, a specifically Canadian interest and a broader global interest. The specifically Canadian interest is reasonably easy to protect, and that is Canada's particular access to the U.S. market. And because of those 3 states, that probably is quite doable. The harder job is Canada also has a broader interest in a stable world trading arrangement. Canada also sells a lot to China and to South Korea, and it's important that Donald Trump not blow up the entire world trading system. Canada has much less influence over that. So the specific Canadian interest you can achieve some successes on. The broader interest is going to require broader work by a lot of allies, not just Canada.
Who won the day?
Look, any day in Washington, something not totally unprecedented and catastrophic happens is a good day. Yesterday, or I think it was the day before, at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump was literally reading highly classified documents illuminated by an iPhone, which can be hacked by any spy service in the world. Today, nothing too catastrophic happened for those 3 hours that Justin Trudeau was in Washington. Everybody won.
A lot of people are telling us that the White House, the administrative area of the White House, is in serious chaos.
Yes.
Has been for a number of weeks. Is that over the top reporting, or is it really in chaos?
It's nowhere near the top. I've seen rocky transitions before. Bill Clinton in 1992 had a rocky transition because he didn't like to run a hierarchical White House, and he didn't like the idea that, hey, I'm the president, I'm the boss, I have to act like my dad. George W. Bush in 2000 had a difficult transition. Because of the recount, he had half as much time as most presidents do to start his administration. But this really is different. This is not just chaos. This is a lot of... Look, the people in the White House in the most important jobs really shouldn't have those jobs. We have the weakest White House Chief of Staff ever. We have a White House National Security Advisor who's suspected of being under foreign influence. We have a weak White House counsel, and we have some pretty nihilistic personalities all through the West Wing. It's a very rocky place, and of course we have a president who is fitful and undisciplined. it's substantially weirder than usual. The good news is there's also a federal bureaucracy, there's also Congress. Canada has a lot of friends in Washington. There's a lot that depends on this relationship, and people know it. And so there are many people, not just the president, and fortunately not just the president, who are invested in making the relationship work.
All right, we'll leave it at that. David, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We'll talk again soon with David Frum, I'm sure. Coming up next, it's a tense night for asylum seekers hoping to make it to Canada. Will U.S. authorities respect their sanctuary?
This is the story of building the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Between Jasper and Red Pass, a start is made. All the latest weapons employed by engineers in modern pipeline construction converge on the theaters of war. The enemy, one by one, toppling to echoing cries of timber. And the steel monsters arrive. To 140 sidings from Edmonton to Vancouver, 5,000 railway flat cars bring their loads of pipes, and then to their individual prearranged spots in the continuous chain. They're linked together by a complicated process that assures 100% accuracy. The pipe is 24 inches in diameter, and every inch of it must be evenly coated. And then checked and rechecked. Then a wrapping is added, made from glass, felt, and asbestos, as the men observe their finished product laid to rest. A continuous tube, liquid railway, stretching 718 miles.
The big question is, of course, whether there is life on Mars, and the short answer is that it's not impossible.
No one knows what Mars really looks like, but this week, streaming back from deep space is the best information in history, bringing us nearer the answers concerning the origin of life, whether man is something special or a special freak.
The search for life on Mars is still continuing. Data received from the Viking landers have puzzled NASA scientists, and within the past 2 days, they've been able to confirm that the ice caps of Mars are really frozen water, not carbon dioxide as once believed. So the chances of finding life get better with each passing day.
Its past was hostile and torn by meteors. Its present is cold and barren. A colony here would seem a futile fantasy. But today's dreamers are scientists, and they do their dreaming for NASA.
I think the possibility of Mars as a second home for mankind is very important for our future as a race.
The students are building a prototype Martian colony called Marsville. It's on Earth, but they do understand what it will take to settle on Mars.
The temperature on Mars is a lot colder than on Earth.
And these students understand cooperation is the only way to get to Mars.
I mean, with all the technology they have now, we could have somebody go up pretty soon.
They've come from all over the world for this meeting of the International Mars Society. They've got bumper stickers. They've got a Martian flag already picked out.
The one question that always comes up is this: is it worth the many billions more to put people on the surface of the red planet rather than just machines?
The Mars fans here admit the barriers are huge, but they also say we have the capability and the money to get to Mars. All we need now is the will to do it.
To find out more, we need to go out into space, and space research, like politics, is the art of the possible. What we would like to do must be weighed against what we can do.
Border security was a major theme of today's meeting at the White House, but one issue not discussed was the surge of asylum seekers entering Canada from the United States by foot. In recent weeks, we've shared the stories of people who have made the desperate trip, and now that increased traffic is putting extra strain on aid groups on both sides of the border. Karen Pauls has more.
These refugee claimants came several weeks ago, and they got a place to stay.
I feel happy
Like many others, they walked over the border. They were intercepted by the RCMP, interviewed and cleared by the Canadian Border Services Agency, then handed over to local aid agencies. But those groups say with dozens coming over almost every weekend, they're tapped out.
We need your help.
They're scouring the city for apartments, asking law students to help fill out refugee applications, and trying to raise $1 million.
Right now, our immediate need is financial.
Many of these asylum seekers come from the Minneapolis area, or at least they're using it as a transit hub. Many living under deportation orders in the United States, living in fear of immigration raids like this one. Some activists are speaking out against the raids. Others are taking a different approach. Pastor James Erlandson is part of Isaiah. It's a multi-faith group in Minnesota. His is one of 24 congregations that have offered up their buildings as sanctuary.
Maybe put some kind of a privacy curtain or something.
This choir storage room could become temporary housing for people afraid of immigration raids and for those thinking about crossing the international border on foot.
Why should they make that journey and lose fingers and toes in the cold? Let's keep them safe and warm here.
There's no law saying immigration officers can't raid a church, but the Isaiah group is counting on a long-standing tradition of safe houses.
We have a history in this country of churches being able to practice their faith freely, and that involves offering sanctuary to people.
Today, RCMP said another 7 people crossed into Manitoba. Groups on both sides of the border are concerned, and while they don't see a solution, they say they'll keep helping as long as there's a need. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Nick Purdon has also been investigating the surge in border crossings. Tomorrow night, you'll have a story you won't want to miss.
The story of the border crossings in Manitoba has been making headlines for weeks.
Walking on it was very difficult. My legs was not holding me, like I was shaking. I'm almost giving up because I was so tired. And I couldn't thinking of going forward at that time because I was thinking I might even die because it was cold.
When I spent the night on the border this weekend, at 4:30 a.m., I came across something incredible. That story, tomorrow on The National.
Tens of thousands of people are still out of their homes in Northern California. Problems at a dam threaten to unleash floodwaters into their cities. The issue isn't the dam itself, it's the backup measures. These spillways are meant to divert water when levels get too high. But when used after recent heavy rains, the paths started to erode. Kim Brunhuber has the story from nearby Yuba City.
The alert came, word spread. Get out, now.
Our phones started going off and we just immediately loaded up the kids and took off.
I had people almost hitting me, running me over. It was insane.
Towns all around America's tallest dam emptied out. Almost 200,000 people forced to evacuate. Many of them now gathered in shelters, churches, fairgrounds, anywhere that will take them.
Everybody literally threw everything in their cars and they were gone.
After more than 5 years of drought, now the opposite problem, one they've never faced before. Lake Oroville, one of California's largest man-made lakes, has been rising so rapidly, first the dam's spillway started to erode. Then they turned to the emergency spillway, which hadn't been used since it was built more than 50 years ago. But it too started to erode. If enough earth washes away, millions of liters of lake water will gush over nearby towns.
What we're looking at is approximately a 30-foot wall of water that would be coming out of the lake. Not the lake draining, but a 30-foot wall of water.
The water level has lowered and the erosion has stopped for now. They've been working on repairing the spillways and are hoping to drop these giant boulders to shore up the area.
The lake levels are continuing to fall. Our objective is to lower the lake level by 50 feet in order to prepare for future inflow of water due to storms and precipitation.
And that's the big worry now. Later this week, forecasters expect storms that could bring 5 to 15 centimeters of rain. Another huge challenge for a system that has managed to avert disaster without entirely passing the test. Kim Brunhuber, CBC News, Yuba City, California.
Chicago is still reeling from a shockingly violent 2016. More than 750 people were killed, the most in the U.S., and more than 4,000 people were shot. But even in that environment, what happened over the weekend has shaken the city. 11-year-old Takaya Holmes and 12-year-old Kanari Gentry Bowers were both shot in the head in separate incidents, both bystanders. Here's how one of Kanari's relatives describes how she's hanging on.
From the time she got shot, she was pronounced dead. She came back. She died again. She came back.
In addition to the two girls, 25 other people were shot around the city over the weekend. 32 people are dead in Taiwan after a bus lost control on an exit ramp. Most of the victims were elderly. 12 others are being treated in hospital. No one wants to be out of their house for too long when it's getting repaired, but not too many people would have a story like this to tell. It's the latest from the CBC's Go Public team and Rosa Marcatelli.
If we get some answers and get our house back, get our life back, you can quit your 2 jobs again and go back to where your life once was.
It is tight living, a 300-square-foot trailer that's now home for Sharon and Paul Goff, and they share it with their teenage son and 3 dogs. The trailer is parked on the driveway of what used to be their dream home.
It went from a simple tree falling on our home to mega destruction.
The Goffs hired a contractor recommended by their longtime insurance company, Wawanisa.
We felt that we have a claim, they have good people, what they call preferred vendors, that's fine for us.
It was anything but fine. The hole in the roof was left open for 8 months, covered only with a nylon tarp. Rodents got inside the walls.
It wasn't just squirrels and birds, it was rats. Anybody that's come and gone out of this attic has been wearing something similar to this and a lot better respirator.
Their insurance called in a second preferred vendor to do pest control. It used poison instead of traps. The hole in the roof was then sealed by the contractor with the dead rodents inside. There are flies all over and a lot of holes in the walls from a third company hired to clean it all up.
It just goes on and on and on and on.
Wawanisa didn't answer our questions about how it chooses its preferred vendors. Its website says it provides homeowners names of contractors with which it has had good experience and that provide quality claim repairs. Almost every insurance company has contractors it recommends to do repairs.
They're preferred not because they're good at their craft, it's because they're cheap.
The Goffs and their insurance company are now locked in a formal dispute resolution process over the scope and the cost of repairing all that damage. Wawanisa says it believes there will be a fair outcome, but the process takes months, and in the meantime, the Goffs are still living in that trailer. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
One of Saskatchewan's foremost citizens has passed away. Tyrone Tutusis was an actor, an activist, and an educator. But perhaps most importantly, he threw himself into the cause of preserving the Plains Cree culture and language.
And because of the industrial and residential school eras where the oral history transmission process was disrupted because the language wasn't allowed, a lot of what was passed on from grandfather to father, from grandfather to grandson, stopped.
Tutusis recorded the oral histories provided by the elders, calling himself a story keeper. He also spent a lot of time explaining those stories to students. For 15 years, he was the key driver of powwows held by the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, a group his grandfather helped found. But his roots were even deeper, a direct descendant of the famous 19th century leader known in English as Chief Poundmaker. Tyrone Tutusis died of cancer at the age of 58. Up next, Donald Trump and the art of the handshake. We scout his signature moves.
This afternoon in St. John's, Newfoundland, a young man named Terry Fox started running.
Many people have run or walked across Canada, but Fox hopes to be the first to do it with an artificial leg.
I got
a lot of positive attitude, and I think I can do it.
He calls his running style the foxtrot. After 25 days in Newfoundland, Terry had raised $25,000.
That song was commissioned by the Cancer Society, which had its own doubts when he started off. Now, as he pounds out the kilometers, the money pours in, most of it in cash.
He's got all the guts in the world. I wish him all the luck in the world, too. I hope he makes it.
What do you think of Terry Fox?
I think he's great.
He'll make it. He'll make it.
The run to City Hall, down University Avenue, took Terry by hundreds of people. It was an emotional moment for many of them.
I knew I was going to make 20 miles. When people are out there like that, it was incredible today.
We've seen him surrounded by crowds of supporters, but the crowds go home. Terry keeps running.
I'm stubborn and competitive, and I don't know, I really enjoy life. I enjoy challenges. I don't like people feeling sorry for me. I don't like pity, and I wanted to show these other people what I could do.
The National with Knowlton Nash.
Good evening. A story of incredible courage came to an end today at a news conference.
Yesterday I was running, and I had noticed a little bit of hardness in breathing, and I decided I had to go see the doctor, and it was discovered then that the cancer had spread, and now I've got cancer in my lungs, and
From one end of the country to the other, there has been a spontaneous outpouring of support for Terry Fox and cancer research. Rarely, if ever, have so many people been so deeply moved by one individual.
if it comes to the point where I'm told I'm going to die of cancer, I haven't got a chance, I've got to be able to face that. And
good evening. Terry Fox died this morning in a British Columbia hospital, 1 month before his 23rd birthday.
Well, he was a very brave boy, I must say, and I feel very sad about it.
Don't cry, love. It's all right. Don't cry, sweetie. It's all right.
I think he touched the hearts of a lot of Canadians, and they all really look up to him.
More than our sympathy, we would like you to express as well our profound gratitude for the gift which Terry gave to all of us, the gift of his own boundless courage and hope.
Canadians everywhere walked and jogged and ran to raise money for the fight against cancer.
He accomplished more in a few short months than most of us can hope for in a lifetime.
When two leaders meet, it's not always about what they say, at least in words. Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump have people around the world readying their body language, specifically their hands. There's perhaps no better way to express a sense of control in business and in politics than a firm handshake. For Trump, it's a full contact sport, and he's got a few power moves. The first we'll call the inward yank. An example, when he announced his Supreme Court nominee. Missed it? Slow it down. And from the side. Not one, but two yanks. His other technique, the reassuring top tap. We saw it in action during that 19-second handshake with Japan's Shinzo Abe. 2 taps and 2 yanks for those keeping score. So now you know some of his moves. How did Trudeau do in his first round? No yanks, no taps. Trudeau almost leads with his own move. We'll call it the deltoid brace. But round 2 in the Oval Office is a different matter. Looks short and sweet, right? No special moves here. But one frame that's getting a lot of attention, albeit out of context, is this one, shot from Reuters. The front page of The Guardian, GQ, and New York Magazine, and all the Photoshop challenges imagining their own version of events. From jokes about the size of his hands to a hologram of the Death Star. A few Canadian flavors, too. Some poutine on a plate. and last year's favorite, Tiny Drake. I like the Drake one. That's the National for this Monday night. For news at any hour, you can always go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm Peter Mansbridge. Thanks for watching.